Hello and welcome to The Connection Compass. I am your host, Andrea Louise Evans. To find out more about my work, please visit andrealevans.com. Today is a solo episode and I'm talking about living a seasonally guided life. So make yourself comfortable and listen in. So welcome. We are now into the second series, The Connection Compass. It's exciting to be here this season. We have much more conversation now that the foundations have been set for the Connection Compass in season 1. The work of the Connection Compass has 4 pillars: self, nature, environments we live and work in, and each other. Today, we're focusing on nature, the connection that we have, and the connection that we have with the seasons. As you know, I take a very holistic approach to life, drawing upon the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of our world. I like to mix science with different philosophies and perspectives, bit of a mishmash approach, but that is life and that is how it is. There will be some things we meet in life that resonate, and sometimes we'll come across things that just don't. And that's the beauty of life and the journey that we take. My work around the seasons is often found in writing. You'll find a whole load of it on my Substack, A Seasonally Guided Life. You'll also find it embedded in online courses, and those courses encourage you to deep dive into yourself, have that real close introspection with yourself, and get to know yourself at a deeper level. You will also find my work for the seasons in yoga retreats as well. I really like to lean into nature because it creates such a beautiful anchor for us. I actually have a small retreat coming up in March. It's called Coming Home to You. So I will post the details of that in the notes. A lot of the work I've done around the seasons is a result of observing myself throughout the year. A keen gardener, I love to grow things from seed. I often explore the symbolism of nature and link it to the life I'm living in the moment. A sowing of the seed equates to a new project, maybe an intention or something to aim for in the future. The layers of a rose representing our human complexity and the deep layers of our existence. Depending on the philosophies you follow, you may follow a 4-season approach. So, for example, if you look at paganism, they follow the 4 seasons and honor the 8 festivals within the wheel of the year. I tend to lean towards Taoist philosophy. Taoism is an ancient Chinese philosophy that focuses on 5 seasons throughout each year: spring, summer, late summer, autumn, and winter. I really love the John Kirkwood books that go into depth around the details of the seasons and the elements associated with the seasons as well. I feel that using the seasons as a guide is a really simple and creative way of managing your energy. Living a seasonally guided life is not a linear life, but a life of noticing, observing, and feeling, and a return to the center when life throws us curveballs. We will all have deadlines to meet, family pressures, a month where our whole social events social events for the year happen at once. So that means we're not always able to rest in winter when we're meant to, or take high energetic action in the summer. And if we've been pushing through all through the seasons for years, even, by the time summer comes, we're often feeling frazzled and burnt out, and you find yourself in a space of enforced rest. That's happened to me a couple of times. Working with the seasons, it helps you to develop a deeper sense of connection to yourself and the world around you. It helps you feel a sense of calm and peace and patience when we have that connectedness. Using the seasons as a reference helps us to reduce stress and burnout, increases self-awareness, and we just get this real lovely natural rhythm and pace to life. And as I think most of us agree, life does feel very chaotic externally to us. There's always something that everybody's raging about, and we're moving at such a fast pace. And the amount of information that we're exposed to on a daily basis is overloading, it's overwhelming. I think there are some of us that are really tuning towards the natural rhythm of life by engaging in the seasons because it's enabling us to slow down, to have more focus in the present moment instead of worrying what is happening in the news and around us. The level of violence we are seeing around the world from people that are so disconnected from themselves that they only understand destruction as a way forward. And we do need an antidote to that. We need to restrike the balance, turning within, tune into nature as a sanctuary we all need. But by doing that, it also gives us environmental stewardship because when we understand something at a deeper level and care for it and understand how something can work for us, it becomes more relevant and we take care of it and all that's in it. And the earth needs us to do that right now. And we've got the cycles of the seasons, but we have cycles within cycles. So not only do we have cycles of the seasons, but moon cycles, menstrual cycles, we have inner seasons as well. Sometimes we might feel like we've had a particular long winter or a short summer in bloom. I know that in the year 2020, when I was working on the COVID wards, getting sick just before Christmas, winter felt like it had started in September. And a few months before, I got sick, I very much felt a deeper dive into winter, and it didn't feel like winter finished till April 2021. Embracing the seasons creates a sense of peace and balance, stability when everything feels so chaotic. And I think it provides a sense of trust and faith in life and the world around you. Because when you think about it, the seasons are always consistent and they may look a little different due to climate change, but they always remain the same in their symbolism and meaning. They always come around. I think it also increases our ability to surrender and let go and increases our connectedness to nature. So, what do I mean about connectedness? It's the way how we think and feel about nature. The Mental Health Foundation in 2021 published a report during Mental Health Awareness Week. It's called Nature: How Connecting with Nature Benefits Our Mental Health. The report highlighted that just being in nature has positive effects. So, it reduces our cortisol levels. We have a sense of calmness and peace. However, when we start to think more deeply about it, it's that when this connectedness really starts to develop. For my work around the seasons, I use Taoism. Sometimes it's good to look to the past to find the answers and solutions for the problems we face in the future. And this ancient Chinese philosophy supports me to do that. Taoism emphasizes living in harmony with nature, embracing simplicity and spontaneity. It challenges convention notions of morality, emphasizing the relative values and the importance of our intuition. And in this world of misinformation and disinformation, our intuition is really, really important at this time. So the more we can strengthen, exercise it, and use it in our daily lives, the better. So let's get to the nitty-gritty of working with the seasons as I've learned and worked with them. So each season has two beginnings. If you're used to living a seasonally guided life, You will be aware of this anyway. So we have the meteorological beginning to the seasons and we have the astronomical beginning. So in terms of the meteorological start of the seasons, it's always the first of the month. So winter is the 1st of December, spring the 1st of March, summer the 1st of June, and autumn the 1st of September. So that's if you're living in the northern hemisphere. When the equinoxes occur, we have the astronomical start to the season. So if you're used to working with the seasons, observing and feeling, you will find that you fall in alignment with astronomical or the meteorological season. And that will change throughout the year. So, for example, through 2024, I was in alignment with the changes of the seasons meteorologically until we got to December the 1st. I felt like I had a really long autumn in 2024, bringing in the harvest and the new right up until the 21st of December, which kind of set the foundations for 2025. Once I entered winter at the winter equinox, I then went into quite a deep, quiet, introspective time. And it was quite healing, really, when I think about it. And it challenged me to see myself differently. The more you start to work with the seasons, the more you look deeper, the more you will notice how they're playing out for you. So, as well as those outer seasons, you will have your own inner season too. So, sometimes like in summer, everybody's feeling really energetic and in a party mood, and for some reason, you just don't feel it. Vibrancy just isn't there for you. And, that could be an inner season. Each season has its own uniqueness. Each one is associated with color, sense of emotion, organ, element, energy, and direction. And then with each season holds the energy of the masculine or the feminine, the yin and the yang. And when I talk through the seasons a little bit more, we'll explain and go into a bit more depth about that and why it's so important for those energies and for us to be aware of in terms of them managing our own energy. I work with the seasons because I feel my work is very much focused on connection and interconnectedness. And the seasons is something that we all have in common, every single person on this planet. And I'm sure every one of us at some point in our lifetime will be able to share a memory about a season that's been lived. I think the seasons support us to tap into our own possibility and potential. The seasons support us to become less distracted and more focused, more tuned into ourselves and the world around us. And I think it supports us to shut out the noise and focus on what truly matters and the beauty and the wisdom that we have around us. And it's absolutely free. It's a way of living a slower and gentle pace life. Nature, as we mentioned earlier, also supports our mental health. We have some shocking mental health statistics, and nature is an important part of healing and reducing, mental health. It reduces our stress, replenishes our cognitive resources, and improves our focus and concentration. There was a great study where they had two control groups of students, one group looking at nature and the environment every 20 minutes or so, and then a second that was in more of a concrete room with no windows or access to nature. And it was found that the group had access to nature were making less mistakes. I've been growing this work around the seasons since 2020, and it all stemmed from working in the pandemic and just having a day off one day and being in the garden and just writing. And I remember feeling really, really anxious and panicky. And I kept thinking to myself, is this ever going to end? The sun was really warm that day and there was a beautiful breeze. The world seemed still and silent, and there was just the noise of the breeze moving through the trees. And a little rhyme came into my mind: in spring we sow, in summer we grow, in autumn we harvest, and in winter we rest, review, and renew. And it just reminded me really that the seasons change, and the pandemic was a season in our lives. We weren't going to be in this place forever, and that things would change eventually, although we just didn't know when. But in that moment, it provided hope and support in a moment that I felt really, really scared. When we're working with the seasons and embed that energy and blessings into our life, our relationship changes with the seasons. So they become so much more about gardening or festivities that we have, but something deeper and more meaningful. With the seasons being encased in symbolism, we can access that energy. And then bringing in the energies of the masculine and the feminine, you find that life becomes real rhythmic and synchronistic. World feels less chaotic, and you're able to manage your energies better as you become more self-aware and less likely to burn out. So while I've been going through the journey of working with the seasons, I first started with a small skeleton of a course, an online course that I trialed. And I think that was 2021, and then 2022, I brought the courses online, and then in 23, 24, I brought them into in-person workshops and embedded them in a yoga retreat. So let's take a walk through the seasons now. Whenever I started writing the courses for the seasons or implementing the retreats, I always seem to start with winter. So I think we'll start there. Of course, we're in winter now, and winter holds a yin energy. So it's more feminine in nature. So this is the time of year when we're more likely to turn inwards and really listen to our intuition. It's a great time for reflection. It's a great time for gathering what you've learned over the year that's gone by so far, looking at what has worked well and what hasn't worked well. We did this in the midwinter reflection earlier in January. And start to plant the seeds for the future, for the next cycle of the seasons. When we're in that feminine energy, we still take action, but it's perhaps slightly different from the energy of summer, which is more associated with the masculine energy. So it may be that in summertime that we push forwards, we push and we push and we push. So we're taking action constantly. Whereas in the winter, with that feminine energy, more likely to take action, but then perhaps pause and surrender and see what happens. It is quite difficult to step into this energy in the wintertime. There's a few reasons, really. So, first of all, we have lots of festivities happening in December, and we might find that our attention is just pulled in all directions. And, you know, there's lots of expectation for us to be here, there, and everywhere, lots of social gatherings. And so to find that quality rest time is really difficult. And then, you know, some of us might have jobs where it doesn't allow us to pause, that we can't do that due to the nature of the work. Like, for example, mine, you know, when I've been nursing on the wards, if anything, it kind of speeds up. And then there are times of jobs where obviously wasn't on the wards, but I was more kind of office based. But I remember one particular job, and I just used to have December just filled with loads of planning and putting things in place. And I wasn't happy until I finished for Christmas and everything was done. And if it wasn't finished, I would feel really kind of unsettled and uneasy. And then as time's gone by, and obviously the work into the seasons has increased, it's not about stopping and not doing anything, but it's about holding that awareness of what the season is doing. Everything is drawing back, everything is kind of going back towards the earth, and it doesn't mean that things are not happening, energy's still rumbling away underneath the earth's surface. And it's a bit like us, we'll hold these plans and ideas, but we don't have to bring them out for everyone to see in the winter moment. We can allow things to kind of rumble underneath and knit and come together. And, we'll take action when we feel ready, when our energy is a little bit higher in the spring. So I think it's when we come to winter, it isn't about not taking part in the festivities. It's not about not taking action, but how we work is a little bit different. And also be mindful that when life is really busy, that we need to carve out real quality time for our rest, and good, deep quality rest as well. I've recently been doing my somatic yoga training, and there's nothing like a somatic yoga course to teach you that you're not where you think you are in terms of relaxing. And what I've realized is, well, there's quite a few things that I've realized actually. So the first is that when I think I'm relaxing, I'm actually not. And I'm holding myself in tension. And also, I thought that I have had probably a really busy 2 years, 2.5 years maybe, and where I just felt like I've been on the go all the time. But the actual course has made me realize that I've probably on the go for about 7 years, and I haven't really truly rested or relaxed in the way that I thought I had. And somatic is often about, somatic yoga is about layers, so I think the further we go and look into ourselves and notice ourselves more, we uncover another layer to kind of heal and relearn. And I think winter's been about that for me this year. I've really had some deep introspection. In 2020, like I said, when I was sick over the Christmas period, well, I felt like I'd been put in a dark hole. It was horrible. But it did give me the space and time to reflect about my life and where I was. And I wasn't really where I wanted to be. I don't think any of us were really where we wanted to be. But I remember lying there in bed and thinking, oh my gosh, how have I got here? A year before, I'd made a decision to kind of come away from nursing and focus on all the other work that I do, the yoga and the coaching. And, I'd find myself working in a pandemic, and I think I was in the right place. I don't think I should have been anywhere else but where I was. But I was thinking right now it's time to start focusing on these other skills that you have, no holding back, no procrastination, which is easier said than done. But yeah, winter, I really holding space. And I really dislike New Year because we're coming into kind of midwinter and our energies are low, but everyone wants to party and be really loud. And I just don't want to do that. I just want to hibernate. and just have some space and time to reflect on what is going to kind of become in the future. So yeah, winter is all about rest, review, and renew for me. And the element that's associated with water in Taoist philosophy, sorry, the element that's associated with winter in Taoist philosophy is water. And the color deep blue or black, or like an ink blue. And when you think about water, it has that possibility and potential to be fast flowing, but it also has the opportunity to be still and settled and to mold into the space of where you are. And I think when we allow ourselves to surrender to the extent that we need to, things will bubble to the surface on their own that need your attention, that might need healing, that might need changing, that, ideas might come to the fore and they might start to merge with old ideas and become something new. And so, the healing bit isn't to fight new bits. I don't think things come up for healing that we can't deal with anyway, but sometimes those things that need healing, or they need our attention, where we need to make the changes, come to the surface in winter because they're integral to us being able to move forward into the spring when we have more energy to take action. So I hope that helps you understand winter a little bit. So really great place to just turn inwards, create, light those candles. I really struggle with the winter time a little bit. I'm okay up until about mid-January, and I really start to crave the warmth. I really start to crave that spring. And I think that the winter's become easier to manage as I've done this work, as I understand it has that purpose around that reflection and renewal. But do I need some sun right now? But you can make your space nice and warm and cozy. So obviously from winter, we then go into spring. And, this time of year, January, it's all about new goals, new you, getting fit, getting active. And our energy kind of burns out, doesn't it? Kind of like in February or March. And it's because the energy's not there. We're in the depth of winter. So sometimes if you can get yourself into space of just slowing down a little bit, just taking January and February time for things to settle, do some exercise, but don't push yourself to kind of breaking point. Even change the exercise that you do. If you're a runner, or, if you really like, weights, maybe just do some yoga, or I don't know, just something that's not as high energy. Just allow yourself to step back a little bit. But also, we don't want to refrain from pushing too hard. So often when we get into the new year, everyone's like, right, come on, let's go. Let's move forward. Let's be new, put our new goals down. But we just want to slow it down. Our energy's not ready. So what happens is we enter the spring. The spring energy starts to rise slowly. So as we hit March, the spring energy comes in, that masculine energy starts to wake up. And as March and April, we start to get a real kind of rise in our energy. So we naturally start to feel like doing more and taking action and moving forwards towards our goals. I always say if it snows in the springtime, it's that opportunity to just step back and reflect some more. So we've gone from the yin energy into the yang energy now. The energy is building. We're really pushing forward. We're taking action with our goals into the summer. So we have a really high energy. So we find ourselves doing more. We might be nurturing our goals, nurturing our aims and objectives, and pushing forwards with projects. We might find ourselves taking on more and doing more. And that's where we need to just be aware of how high the energy is of that season, because that's when we can get burnt out. So again, remember I was talking about a seasonally guided life. It's having that observation, that awareness, that feeling of where you are all the time in relation to the seasons. It's not about not doing. It's just holding that awareness. And when you feel in that things are getting a little bit too much, just ease off. So we might see our projects come into bloom. Sometimes you might work on something that might take a few rounds of the cycles of the seasons. Like the work that I've done around the seasons and around the connection compass didn't happen in one cycle of the seasons. It's happened over many, many years, layers happening. Each year a new bloom come in, a new foundation to work from, and then we go around again and take it to its next foundation, its next level. And it might be the same for you with something that you're working on as well. In the summer, we are very much heart-based, so really focusing in on that, what the heart wants, and working from that place. And we can start to do that work, some of that work in the spring, as well as we're sowing the seeds for intention of what we want to do and what we want to achieve for the coming year. So in Taoist philosophy, we then come into the late summer, which is known as the fifth season. And that's the period that's said to be between summer and autumn. It's also said to be the last 18 days of each season as well. So this fifth season is known as Earth, and it's the axis which all the other seasons kind of work around, but it's also an opportunity for us to review in that period as well. So sometimes we might find ourselves, coming up to kind of the changes of the seasons. We might feel that things are slowing down, or we need to take some time to reflect. Then we go into autumn. And I have to say, when I started this work, I had no idea about the level or depth that autumn goes into in terms of its symbolism and wisdom. And I always thought autumn was just about change and the leaves falling in the trees and the beautiful colors. But over the years, I've learned that there's so much more to autumn. So we might feel a sense of grief around this time of year. So, perhaps if you've lost somebody around, in the year, you might feel it more around this time of year. The leaves are falling from the trees, and we might find ourselves mimicking that in terms of having to let things go. Perhaps things that we don't always want to let go, and sometimes it's an old way of being, a belief that you've carried about yourself, or perhaps you're moving from one job to another. A lot of courses as new school year, and moving from primary school to high school, to university, and there's all these kind of changes. There's also about finding balance between light and shadow. So we might have to be more aware of the side of us that's preventing us from moving forwards, or where we're carrying fears, and to look more towards our higher self, our higher soul consciousness. And, there's a balance to be found between action and movement. When we come into autumn, we're again leaving the masculine energy behind and then moving into a yin energy. But then around the autumn equinox in September, we are learning to balance that masculine and the feminine energy before the masculine energy recedes and we move into that yin. We move towards the rest of the year. So when in the autumn, when all the leaves have fallen to the ground or we've had to shed parts of ourselves to move forward, we may feel a vulnerability. But if we take wisdom from the trees always stand tall. And even in that vulnerability, they remain rooted and grounded. And we can take that wisdom and take that on board and move forwards, even though we may feel that vulnerability. And then obviously we then come into the winter again. So I hope that explains a little bit of working with the seasons and where I come from in terms of working with the seasons and how I move that work forwards. Working with the seasons is very difficult in a corporate job. I think if you work for yourself, it's a little bit easier. If you're an artist, if you're creative, and you work with the energy of the seasons, you will start to see a nice pattern. So I've not been able to work with the seasons with a job, that I've done in an organization, but I can certainly do it in my creative world. And I run a few years now working like this. And so what I find is that spring, summer is my most energetic time, taking action, really pushing things forward, not really taking much of a break, really creative, really big pieces of creative work kind of coming to the fore. And then in the autumn, we get some things kind of coming together. The energy starts to ease off. We come more into that yin and we start working with our intuition and things seem to soften a little bit. And then we move towards the relaxation and the deeper reflection in the winter time before it all starts again. Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of The Connection Compass. If you would like to find out more about my work, please visit AndreaLEvans.com. If you have any questions about the podcast, please visit Andrea L. Evans' Facebook page. And if you think this episode will help someone, please leave a review at podchaser.com. And finally, remember, keep talking, keep connecting for a more interconnected world. Take care.